All right. So today we are here together with the two co-designers of the politics module. We have Justin and Brad, and in the background lurking is Bill and myself, Jon. And we're going to talk a little bit about the politics module, the ideas, thoughts, and ambitions behind it.
Hopefully answer questions like, who needs a damn politics in my space game?
Yeah, well, you kind of wanted it there, otherwise you would have said no, right? So why did you want the politics module in your space game?
I felt my son Matt, also a game designer, disagreed with me vociferously. I was thinking of him when I made that quip earlier, but I felt that politics is always important, and even more so in space, to define and delimit what is proper to do, what are the proper goals, and how humans get along, and the different ways it could go, and the different consequences of different politics. Politics are in all my games, pretty much all of them, with that encompass more than one generation at least, and so I wanted politics in my damn space game. So.
If I could say something about that too, so I actually studied space for my bachelor's degree, and one of the courses I took was space policy, and it was actually my least favorite course, which is funny because I'm now designing politics for space. but yeah, I totally agree. I honestly think that in a simulator game, politics is everywhere in space policy, so or in space exploration. So
yeah.
And you jumped into this unknowingly.
Oh yeah, completely no. We actually, me and Justin first started working on the ideas of conflict, but we felt that politics, backwards design to that, was a little difficult, and we were able to, by changing the politics system a little bit and making a new one, really open up the way conflict would work in the future. And so, but still, tackling the issues like Phil had set out about giving players a way to describe the policies they want to enact with their own agencies, things like that, and kind of influence the course of the game through their own politics.
Because politics and conflict are intertwined.
Yes, yeah. Yes.
And we actually spent quite a lot of time designing what we thought would be a pretty decent combat module based off of a majority of the High Frontier 3 rules. And most of the time we were doing this, it was, man, it would be really nice if we can just redo the politics. I spend a lot of time with this game, and I listen to a lot of people, and the two biggest things that I hear people wanted to change in this version were combat and politics. And I thought, hey, if we're commissioned to do combat, maybe we should probably do politics first, and then it'll make the combat module better. And that's what we got to do.
Yeah. And just to reiterate what Phil said, it's because
one of the biggest struggles is trying to integrate it, so it's not just a tacked-on module, but really integrate it into a lot of the core processes. And this was, I would say, the most, I don't know what you would say, but most difficult design aspect of this.
Oh, certainly. Because, getting it all to grow together was a really hard part, because it's easy to, throw a bunch of pieces in a box, but that integration, that's the critical thing, where one moment you'll find yourself thinking, oh, I can use this to my advantage in a few different ways. Like the other night when I tried in our 4-player game, when I was like, well, I can try and force it now because I don't have any cubes on the board to try and get some points out at the end of the game like that. That was one of those moments that felt good, even though we weren't happy with how the scoring went with that. It was still a nice way to try and affect the game through that and integrate it in.
So my understanding is that this, from my playtest, is this has laws which impact you, all the players, simultaneously throughout the game. It introduces lobbying, where you can try to enact a law even though it may not be active at the moment or enforced. Yeah. And then finally there's an end game scoring in which the politics emphasizes certain
aspects. So, like, for instance, the ideology of authority was centered around establishing a lot of claims, claiming a lot of the system, taking that as your own because you're the centralized authority doing that. So that was one way we thought that would work.
And actually, if I can say, we one of the big core concepts we wanted to keep. There was a couple core concepts actually. The first thing I decided was I want to take water token or water tanks or aqua as we call them now out of politics. We've got rid of the blind election. That was one of the big things that I wanted to do because I felt that was very tacked on. But we did keep the Nolan chart, slightly modified to fit the BIOS series, which is nice. And we also changed, another big change is rather than having one single in power, so to speak, faction, now factions have the ability to decide where they want to go. They start in their historic faction ideology, but they may place delegates or cubes to decide where they want to go, and basically they can invest in these different ideologies and sort of grow their political influence and try and enact laws that are going to benefit them in the game. And so that's really the point of the assembly, and the laws, as Phil was saying, then become active and all players can use them. They sometimes change rules. For example, if equality is active, the research grants opens up and the regular auctions are now closed and you just take the top card of the deck for 2 aqua. So there may be instances where you want to have that, and there may be instances where you want to manipulate the assembly so someone else doesn't have that. And there's
So
ways
this
you can
big
do that.
hex here is the assembly?
Yes.
Yeah, and so we have the 7 different regions in there. Where does it looks so different from the old one, but it's like Justin was saying, the 6 areas are where players can fundraise and delegates get delegates through fundraising or through other means like through the other modules, like in module 2 with exomigration or building colonies. So we have things like that just represent as people are moving into the system, they're also bringing their political ideas and influences into the solar system's assembly. And there's 7 different regions. We tried to have them split along the 3 axes of the traditional Nolan chart, with the centrist kind of representing the middle row between all of them. So all the ones that are polar opposites are sort of diametrically opposed. So
I see that. Freedom versus authority.
Yeah.
Individuality versus unity. That's a really good juxtaposition.
Yeah.
Honor versus equality. I guess one is. Do you have distinguished
like
elites, or is everyone considered identical clones or whatever?
So in this chart, I think we've touched upon it a few times, and I think an interesting thing now is how you can. It's gone back and forth during the design, but at the current state, which I think will be final, is that you spread, but that also simulates that your society moves a little bit at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So you can like jump from one from say equality and just now we go totally into honor and we go totally back. And just to be clear, we don't have the cubes here, but there are these laws. Each of those represent a law, including the one in the middle. They represent a law, and this law means everybody. It affects everybody. It's a global buff or a global rules change. And you can also, if you have cubes in one of them, you can spend the cube to just get this law, even though it's not the general law. You can take it for yourself.
Yep. Like
so you might, if it's a authority where it's much more locked down, you might want to spend one of your equality cubes just to take something from the market without anybody else being able to do anything against it. So we both have cubes spreading in an interesting way, simulating it. And you have the thing that you can do yourself with spending cubes.
Yeah. Do you have time to mention some of the laws and what they do?
Let's talk about the laws.
Sure. So freedom allows you to sell 2 cards for 5 aqua.
And that's called the Free Trade Act.
Yep, Free Trade Act.
We tried to keep the theme of economic freedom being associated with the Shimizu, even though it's not exactly.
It's not exact, but I can tell you that in my playtest, when that was enforced, there was an economic boom.
It does look.
There was a
yeah,
lot
yeah,
of selling and buying
Yeah.
when that happened.
So just to
I
say,
really like that.
just to say, this is about this. There's a market where you can buy cards, but you can also sell to it in this game. And normally you sell one card back to it for 3 aqua, which is the money. Now you get to sell 2 cards with 1 action, and you get 5 aqua for it. And also mentioned was Shimizu. What's Shimizu?
Shimizu is one of the player factions. Returning fans of High Frontier will know and love them, or hate them, depending on your play style. But yeah, they have the Skunkworks ability, and they're supposed to represent Japanese, but space agency. But the Skunkwork ability lets them have as many cards as they want, without worrying about the hand limit. And so this kind of fits where they can just sell, buy. Yeah.
And coincidentally, they also start with a Cuban freedom.
I mean, it's almost like somebody made it with that in
Yeah.
mind. I don't know.
So that's for you.
Yep. So next we have Honor. That's the Paleo Conservative Directive. This one has to do with the new glory chits in the game. And
Yeah.
maybe Ian wants to talk about that for a minute.
I can say something about it. So we have glory sheets. This is the replacement of the glory cards. So instead of having different things you need to keep track of and knowing what kind of thing do I need to complete for this card and so on, we have streamlined it a bit, but also made it more interesting for the experienced player. So now the cheats are something that you pick up on the map, and there are a few cheats. There is 1 cheat per zone, which you pick up by landing somewhere, and you become the first human
Heliocentric zone.
on the heliocentric zone, which are the circles on the map. For those of you who looked through our excellent video about the map, but if you haven't done that, it's a map of our solar system where each planet more or less has a zone. So the first one to land within this zone gets a glory chip, and the further out in the solar system you go, the more glory chips there are to capture.
There's a lot more stuff out there to grab.
So what the Paleo Conservative Directive does is it allows you to, whenever you take a fundraise operation, which replaces the income operation and the political module, instead of just taking 1 aqua, you can take aqua equal to the number of glory chits that you hold. So basically, if you try and get out there early and land on some sites and bring them home, get some glory, you may want to push for this law because it'll give you a little bit more money whenever you try and add more delegates to these.
You've got a bunch of Neil Armstrongs in your court.
Exactly, and now you can send them out to go get some sponsorship deals.
And of course, one of the factions in Honor is NASA.
Yeah, true.
Yes.
So there's always an inner logic to how you have designed.
We
try.
try.
We try.
Yeah.
And what about
We
this
also-
UN General Assembly?
So the UN General Assembly, that's the UN faction holds this place, and this law basically, when this is active,
And this is Unity. If you don't see
yes,
the
Unity.
text there, it's Unity.
When this law is active, any ideology that has at least 2 delegates in it is now active. The catch is no other ideologies or laws are lobbyable. So there is a downside, but it's also nice. I really think this is a great thing for like a 4 or 5 player game when there's more delegates in the assembly, and maybe there's a lot of things that you want to do in one turn, and you don't want to lobby a bunch of delegates away. You can try and push for unity and be able to do 2 or 3 things in the assembly that'll give you some benefits there. So.
All right. And authority?
So, authority. This is martial law. Maybe Brad wants to talk about martial law.
Yeah, martial law. We set this one up.
Assassination.
Yeah, it's assassinations now. So it's in tandem to the new fundraising operation. When martial law is in effect, as an operation, you can discard a delegate from the assembly of anybody's, not just your own cubes. Certainly, you could purge your own, but now you can purge whoever's cubes you like to try and exert some force and control over the assembly using the centralized authority.
And the benefit of this is you get 2 aqua for
yeah.
it. So it does count as an operation. So basically, it's sort of not necessarily a replacement to fundraise, but another option to fundraising, but only available when authority is active or lobbied.
So just a little context there. In this game, there is something called an income operation, where you get if you don't have anything else to do, take income, you get a little aqua, and aqua is money. Now, if you introduce the political module, this income operation is transformed into a fundraise operation. So instead, you do fundraise where you
brilliant
get the
idea.
brilliant idea, and you get the aqua as usual, but you also get to place a delegate in here. So that's combining the income operation and making it a little more interesting. And you put it
Like a political rally.
yeah,
Mhm.
like a political rally, and you put it in here. And there was one more thing that you mentioned, a terminology there about the game, assassinate the operation. So in the game takes place over standard game 48 turns, and each turn you have one operation. So this is maybe the most valuable resource you have. You have 48 things to do,
Mm-hmm.
and you're supposed to industrialize the solar system.
Yeah.
So am I going to spend one of those operations to shoot someone else's delegate somewhere?
Yeah. That's why we had to make sure we sweeten the pot with a little bit of extra water going in there.
Yep.
Um,
So next is equality. I talked about this one a little bit. That's research grants. This changes the auction. So normally when you auction a card, you draw the card that you want. Everyone kind of open bids on it, and then you get the supports for it. If you win the
Whoever
auction,
wins.
yep, whoever wins the auction. But this changes that. So this says now you can only gain cards by paying 2 and taking the top card of the deck. So where this becomes fairly important is the new first player, the rules that we have in the game. And if you are the first player and an inspiration occurs, which changes all the cards to the next card down, you have basically first pick on what to get. And if you use this research grants, then no one can stop you. So it's pretty powerful. But it's good.
So there is no auction.
So there is no
Yeah.
auction during research grants
Yeah.
when research grants is active.
completely.
That's sort of
sensible.
appropriate for equality, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yes. And you can also lobby this, of course. So if it's not active, you can pay 1 to lobby it and just grab, and then you would pay 2 to grab the top card, and no one can say anything about it.
At that increased cost.
Yes.
And pay one is pay one aqua, but you also have to have a delegate in equality
Mm-hmm.
and spend this delegate
Yeah.
as a way to unlock it for 1 turn.
Yeah,
Correct.
so don't want you all thinking that lobbying is something you can do cheap and easy. Yeah, because
But-
there is an investment cost to getting in there.
But hey, guess what? If you see that someone is really looking for a specific card and your turn is first, you can use martial law to kill their delegate, and then they can't lobby anymore. So
Exactly. Yeah.
there you go.
Yep.
The
Last
last one, the last one is individuality. This is the Freedom to Roam Treaty, and this is really about being able to use other people's equipment and things in the solar system to your advantage. And maybe Phil want to talk about this. I don't wanna
Well,
talk about
maybe
it.
Yoon. He's the one who kept pirating everyone's factory in the last couple of games.
Yeah, well, it's a very interesting. It's a very interesting ability, this one, or perk, or whatever, because many of them open up stuff. This one opens up the map so that you can go to someone else's factory, and it's not like claim jumping or doing anything bad, taking it or
You don't
anything.
even need to go to their factory.
No, well, your
Eventually.
car goes there.
Yeah.
So what you are doing is that you can go to a factory and produce something there if you want, or you can refuel there. It doesn't cost the other person anything. You don't take anything of their resources other than maybe the
Yeah, I
planet
sort of
they're
think
at.
of it as someone declaring a national emergency. We need, for this purpose, for the people, for whatever, we need your factory.
yeah. Or it's if you go to the Freedom to Roam treaty name of it, it's more about the Freedom to Roam treaty in
Because you can end up with foreign colonies on opponents' factories.
Yep. Yeah. Sharing homes now.
One thing I want to say about this law is that, generally speaking, the things that are involved in this law you can actually already do in the game, but they're usually easily missed, is what I would say. So under negotiations in the rules, you can use other people's factories for various things. You can do a lot of the things in this law that you could also do when you're committing felonies, which is another thing that happens during anarchy, which changes the game state for a little bit. But what I like about this law is it puts it front and center and says, "Hey, I actually can do these things, and now I don't even need permission."
That's
So,
really
and
amazing.
that's the whole point, and it opens up the opportunity to do them more often, which is in our games that we played has been pretty fun. So
Yeah.
And useful.
And useful, and opens up a new tree of tactics, really.
Oh yeah,
certain-
especially what
some
we saw
cards.
you doing. That was crazy.
Yeah, and some cards that you usually don't maybe buy that much. There is a few cards that you that are more popular than others. Let's say that.
Yeah.
But this one will like give other cards.
Yeah,
More
because now
value.
you can ignore the white side and just go straight to the black side
Yeah,
sometimes. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Last is a centrist, but
the last one I'll talk about is centrist, and I'll say before I talk about this, I wanted to mention one more thing. So Brad and I have been working on this for about a year, and I'm talking lots and lots of hours, and a lot of the laws have changed over this time, and for balance and for usability and opportunity costs and things like that. But I would say this centrist law of mishap insurance has been sort of the focal point of centrist for a very long time because it's useful and it's easy and people actually really like it. So what mishap insurance does is if you have a delegate cube in centrist and a pad explosion or space debris hits you, if the law is active, you gain water equal to the mass of the card that you must decommission back to your hand. So it goes from space back to your hand.
and we've also fixed the lobby too with this one now. So when the pad explosion space debris hits and it's not active, you now just have to get rid of the delegate and pay the cash.
Yeah,
to still be able to use it.
So normally, anytime you're manipulating the assembly or lobbying or using an active law, it's going to be on your turn. But there is, for the centrist specifically, it's never, when pad explosion space debris happens, it's never on anyone's turn. And so the rule is written that you can actually lobby this during this event as well if it's not active, and that could save you a lot of water because there's a card in the game that has a mass 6. So
There's cards with a lot of mess, yeah.
so yeah, it's pretty useful to always have a cube in centrist to be prepared for it. And
It's also useful. I've had this happen to me for, hey, someone's got a lot of stuff in space. Well, let's just take it out of centrist.
correct.
Yeah.
So if it blows up, he has to pay uninsured equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's if you have the rocket material around Earth, where you're building your rocket, and then you're kind of safe from this thing when you go out in space and travel around. And the game is about going to other. It was maybe a bit unclear, but individuality. It's about you go to different planets, different asteroids, different moons, and you build stuff. And with individuality, you can use things that others have built there. But then the centrist is to secure that you're safe while building on Earth, so to speak.
And that's something that everybody could agree on in theory. Whether you're a hardcore libertarian or left of Stalin, you would ideally want your investment in your Earth orbit to be protected and, something that everybody equally values regardless of what happens to it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of turns you could lose.
Yeah.
Yeah, long term.
Yeah.
And then the simulation here is that if you don't have a delegate in centrist, even though it's the law, even this is the law that applies to everyone, if you don't have a delegate there, you're not insured.
Mhm.
You have to invest in your insurance
Exactly.
policy, so to speak.
Yep.
So you need to have someone there really to do this. I also wanted to say that there is 12 turns in the game that goes round and round. So you play 4 times 12 turns, and this is called the solar cycle. This will be found on the solar cycle board. We see a little bit of it up here when there's a solar cycle, and each time something happens here in the blue section of the solar cycle, there is a chance at 2 instances that this will turn into an 8th ideology, actually, or if you want to call it an ideology. I don't know, maybe Phil will say something about, is anarchy an ideology?
No, I do not consider anarchy. I would say anarchy is the lack of an ideology, the absence of it.
All right.
Good answer.
We'll see. Anyway, so that could happen in the events there. And what happens with the politics if a world is going into anarchy?
So that was the nice thing about this, because the event, it always happens in every game with the solar cycle, but when you're playing with the political module, there's going to be some heads rolling when Anarchy comes out. So you'll have to see, you'll roll the dice to see if any of the ideologies lose delegates, and then the active law is going to no longer be active. So to use the powers or abilities, you'll have to lobby while we're still under the effect of anarchy, and that's going to be for the remainder of Blue season.
Yeah, essentially the active law is quote unquote locked down, meaning it can't move. So anytime, even if you fundraise or if you're playing another module and you build a colony or exomigrate, you can add cubes to the assembly, but the active law never moves, and it isn't able to start moving again until the yellow season. So it's sort of just like a season of no change in the assembly, but you can still lobby laws. So.
Yeah, and the season is here. So this square spots is a counter that's going forward. So let's say this event here triggered a anarchy, then you will have 1, 2, 3 turns where the politics arena is locked down.
And also, you'd be allowed to commit felony, so I forgot to mention that. But everybody
And your
thinks-
faction privileges shut down.
Yeah. So
It's kind of exciting during Anarchy.
Yeah.
But I think we better wrap it up. We've got to get to the big Essen Fair for
Yes,
one
we
thing.
do.
Sure.
Yes.
If I can just say one more thing,
Sure.
I just want to mention that being able to design this political module again is really setting us up for redesigning the new combat module, which is going to be called Conflict. So it's not just going to be hand-to-hand physical combat. It's going to be very involved in the politics as well, and you'll see.
Well,
a lot
with
of really cool-
war, for instance,
Yes,
you envision, which I thought was brilliant, loyalists versus the independence movement. Should space be its own entity, separate and free from Earth? Which, if space development occurs, this question will come up.
Sooner or later, it will.
So that's something that we're hoping to have kickstarted in the next Kickstarter. So we'll see what happens, but we're pretty excited about it. That was the whole intent of
That's Module 3?
Module 3, correct? So
It's tentatively Module 3.
Tentatively.
We haven't decided. I think it's going to be Module 3, but module numbers tend to jump up and down, and if you say too much, people think, oh.
Do you have any final words?
Well, I just wanted to say, thanks for the opportunity. I'm really happy that we were able to do this. Brad and I
You wanna
Really,
hold up the box again?
Yeah.
really put our heart into this, and we hope that people like it. We're looking forward to a good 4 days at Essen, talking about it. I'm sure we'll get a lot of questions. I did last time at Essen.
Not just
and,
talking, you're going to be playing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's it, I think.
All right. Well, thank you so much for this interesting, in-depth conversation about the politics module. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Brad.
Yeah.
Thank you, Justin.
Thanks for having us.
I'm Jon. And see you in the next stream.